Hello, everybody. We are Starseed and JB. I'm Starseed.
I'm JB.
And some of you know us as Nikki and John since Facebook won't let us have our other names. So we have had a lot of requests to start doing videos for you and telling you more about our story and our history and all the work and whatnot that we've been through on the twin flame journey. And so we're going to start with the background of uh, how the whole twin flame journey for me started, because I was consciously aware of it before JB was. So at the time, I was actually in a marriage with a very close soulmate who is still very near and dear to my heart. And we were at a bit of a crossroads, we'll say, and struggling between ourselves. Really loved each other a lot and had a lot of background in history, but just our paths were going in opposite directions, and there was just so many differences between us coming up that made it apparent that if we were even able to stay together, that it would have been a very difficult path. And one day, shortly after starting on my spiritual seeking, we'll say, um, going more in depth into spiritual seeking as opposed to the casual manner I had been approaching it before, which was more out of curiosity and so forth. And this became more impassioned. A friend of mine that I had met came over with an older woman he was friends with who started talking to us about relationships and so forth, and brought up the idea of twin flames. And suggested that perhaps my husband and I at the time were twin flames. And when she started explaining to us how you know if you're twin flames, we kind of had this moment where we looked at each other and we're like, I don't think that that explains us. And the idea resonated with me, but it certainly wasn't anything I had encountered before. And him and I had agreed before. We had actually used the term soulmates previous to this conversation. And so he wasn't interested in the topic any further. And of course, that sent me on a rabbit trail, though, and I wanted to know more about what twin flames were. And I had already started working on law of attraction because of the way things were going with our marriage at the time. I was really trying to work on how the divine masculine would show up in my life. I was doing this with some of the exercises that we offer through our coaching and counseling services to our clients. It's a very individualized process. And so for me, through doing that work, I first started with his name on it, thinking that maybe I could sort of manifest him into it. And then it just wasn't working, and it was like having the opposite effect, actually, no matter like how hard I tried and no matter what I believed and prayed for in my heart and all of that. So eventually, when I was talking to this with a um, someone I know, I guess you could call him like a coach that taught law of attraction, they told me just take his name off of it. Just, it may suck to do that, but right now it's an attachment, and you have to be clear with the desires in your heart about the general like feeling you want in your life and the picture you want, but sort of like take the names and such off of it and really let the universe handle part of the co-creation. You can't micromanage everything that you're trying to manifest. It just won't work. So I started working on it again without his name on it, and actually had a soulmate that came into my life and sort of activated me in a way that um, we both kind of went back and forth for a bit about whether or not we were twin flames, and that led me up and down on a bit of a karmic journey with that person for almost 2 years. Um, and towards the end of that, I was getting to a place of all of the self work and journaling and reading and classes and seminars and everything I was doing to try to create happiness in my life, and little bits and pieces of my true self popping out through this and really finding moments of joy and bliss. but finding how much of my life that I was had created in a way that was catering to others and making them happy, I just sort of cut loose, is the way we put it, and just started trying anything and everything, and landed myself in an ashram where I was working on meditation and yoga and learning new spiritual paths that also talked about this divine union, trying to understand. And so this was actually one of the places that for some reason I first felt really comfortable and accepted and in my element, and had a really good feeling of confidence about it, and started spending more time and getting attached and learning Reiki and so forth. And around the same time, parallel, John, who lived out of state, had also kind of had his ears perked up towards spirituality and whatnot. Do you want to share that part?
Yeah, I'll tell my part of the story. So I have I had been in a marriage for 15 years, and about 14 when Nikki and I had met,
Hmm.
and had two kids, and just I'd made a go at a career in a couple of different industries, completed a bachelor's degree online. I just was, there was this emptiness inside me that, I should have been happier. I felt like I should have been found more joy in the family life and the American life. And I never had it bad. We had some financial setbacks. 2007 hit pretty hard. I was in the mortgage industry before that. But so when that all kind of came crashing down, it left me searching for a little bit more meaning. And I too landed in the ashrams. I ended up in an ISKCON temple first, exploring and seeking and getting a hold of some of the esoteric readings and different holy books from different traditions, including Vaishnava Hinduism, and ended up moving to California. I ended up going to California for an event called Bhakti Fest. It's a yoga festival because I had fallen in love with a type of music called kirtan, which is Hindu call and repeat worship music. And there was this guy, Krishna Das, and I loved his voice. No idea what the heck he was singing about, but it calmed me, and I loved it. And so the only thing he was playing at anything nearby me was Bhakti Fest, and I booked tickets. So I went out there 1 year, started doing yoga after that, and then a year later moved out to California with my ex and kids right before Bhakti Fest 2013.
So even before that, while I was in the ashram, um, while there, I decided to celebrate my first Diwali with my ashram. And one of the synchronicities was that John, that same evening, out of state, away from me, had never even met each other before. Ended up.
Oh, ended up just feeling called that evening to go and get some more info and check things out, and maybe talk with one of the priests at the ISKCON temple, the Hindu temple, and happened to stumble into Diwali happening and had no idea what was going on. But they were like, come and sit down. And I went in, and I'm in the middle of this huge Hindu puja, and I have absolutely no idea what's going on. And I just sat and witnessed and tried to take it all in. It was too much to take in, of course. Just blew my mind. Went home that
Mhm.
night and was so inspired that I stayed up until like 2 o'clock in the morning with the kids' sidewalk chalk and drew a giant, like 30-foot tall lotus flower in the middle of the cul-de-sac and put candles all around it. And when everyone woke up in the morning, it was still going. And in fact, it might still be there. I'll find out what the address is and maybe put it in the notes on the video later. But the uh, Google Earth image of the block actually had the giant lotus flower on it. And this was the same night that she was celebrating Diwali for the first time.
So, that was in 2011, and fast forward into June of 2012, I had started feeling some serious urgencies in my life, like things really needed to change. And at that point in time, I had I had actually become pregnant by my husband again for the first time in in about 8 or 9 years. And halfway through the pregnancy, the baby had been growing on top of the placenta, and the placenta burst, and I had what they call an spontaneous miscarriage, which led to me almost bleeding to death. And didn't know at the time because I still hadn't met him yet, but this was on John's birthday. And in that moment, I had, I explained I'm not sure if it was the anesthesia from the emergency surgery or if it was literally a near-death experience, although I recall coming out of my body and seeing myself above, and I thought I must be dying. And so I started having all of these crazy flashing dreams and whatnot. And I remember this weird, it was like conscious but subconscious and almost in a dream, but like I was talking to myself or something. This thought of, oh, this is the moment my life flashes before my eyes. And I felt so peaceful. But everything I was seeing were images of this man that I had never met before. Um, it was not of what had already happened in my life. It was this person in all these different iterations, the same man over and over and over again, us driving in the car, me looking at him driving in the car. It really was like looking through my eyes. Like I could see my hands and what I was doing and things like that. But we were dressed weird outside. We were driving through the woods. We were near waterfalls and all of these things that really had me confused. And I was like, am I remembering a life on another planet or a different time period? Like I had this weird confusion and still wasn't even certain that I wasn't dying. I didn't know what was going on. And when I came to, I didn't even know how to explain it. So I didn't even really talk to anybody about it because I knew that I didn't have anybody really in my life at that time that I felt safe sharing something like that with. And so just carried on, and a couple months went by, and I was really, really, really um, accepting that things were coming to an end with both the soulmate I had been involved with off and on, and my ex-husband, who was also a soulmate, who I had been with for about a decade at that point. And really sort of wanting to like go take leaps of faith, and I had been involved with a transformational coach named Coop Blackson at the time, who was throwing an event called Love Stock, and this was a first year transformational event, spiritual music and dance and healthy foods and all of this, and so I decided to go, and then nobody wanted to go with me that I knew in my immediate circle, and I'm like, damn, I'm gonna have to go on a subway, like into the scary part of Hollywood, and it's gonna be late at night. And I had all these fears coming up, and I said, oh, knock it off. Like this is stupid. I'm just gonna go. And I went, and I still, when I got there, chickened out. And only ended up talking to a couple of people, one of which was the gentleman that was with me the night. So the person who brought the older woman to our house is a filmmaker by the name of Michael Perlin, who did the film Three Magic Words and is the writer of the Declaration of Consciousness. And so he was the only person there that night besides Coop Blackson, who I actually knew in person. So I spoke to him that night. So that was one of the weird synchronicities. And then one other person who has been an interesting character on my journey in general, but hasn't necessarily always had synchronicities with John, just synchronicities of me like being on my path and whatnot. But anyway, so do you want to share how you ended up at Lovestock?
So I had started in like maybe 2010, 2011, reading some different, up on some different religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, trying to gain an understanding, really seeking, really wanting more than my experience was giving me. And that led me into falling in love with kirtan music, a Vaishnava Hindu practice, and really falling in love with the Vaishnava Hindu lore, the traditions, and the stories of Krishna and Radha. And and went to Bhakti Fest, which is a yoga and kirtan music festival in Joshua Tree. And it was a multi-day festival. I had never been to anything like this. I'd never even done yoga before, unless you counted doing yoga on weed. And which I'm coming to find out does not count. That
That's
is
the first place I did
does
yoga too. Are you serious?
yes, and that's hilarious. So yeah, it was about a year before when I started doing we yoga,
Yes, we
but
fit.
but no, I went to Bhakti Fest and had an incredible adventure, which is in a story by itself. Nearly died on the way there. Car broke down in a box canyon. It was pretty wild, and got there and met a few incredible guides, incredible soulmates. Our dear sweet friend Bernadette among them, who is still one of our greatest champions and cheerleaders, and
Yes,
and
absolutely.
and one of our trickiest and most amusing guides, and. I had an incredible experience. I had an awakening. I did a yoga class that I'm pretty sure I actually died at the end of, and it's probably this similar experience to yours. And the I had this found this real amazing sense of peace and calm in myself. And then, kind of came back into my body and realized how unaware I was of my body during that time because it was really hot and I wasn't feeling it when I was in that space. So I had this couple of real incredible awakenings, and then went back to Arizona and did yoga for a year, started, singing and practicing kirtan and listening to some and reading more, but I had no community. There was no one in my experience, no one I knew in my life who had any idea or any interest at all in any of the things I was pursuing. So it was very, very alienating. Then fast forward almost a year and some job changes in the economy, and my ex and I ended up deciding to move to Southern California. And I had this knowing. It's hard to even to say now, but our marriage had been, there was a lot of happiness in it, but I just knew that I didn't love her the way she deserved, and that she didn't love me the way I deserved, and that was the truth of it, that both of us wanted more than the other was willing and able to give. And I don't think either one of us was wrong. Um, but at that time, I kind of had this idea, this knowing that some things were going to change for me when I got to California. And I moved out to California right after my birthday, right after this had happened to Nikki, and went to Bhakti Fest it was like maybe 6 weeks later, Bhakti Fest. And I went to Bhakti Fest and went, this is just, I can't wait a year in between experiences like this. I can't wait another year to be this happy again. I need community. I need to be in this. And so I went, I'd found out about this event, Lovestock, through some people I just met in California, and was going to that and was trying to find a way to make this worthwhile for my family. That at the very least, I wasn't going to be paying to get into my spiritual events. Maybe I could make it a hobby that paid a little. And so I was going to go and do a review of this event, which is an incredible synchronicity that we'll mention later for how we've met in another lifetime. But needless to say, I went to this event with the intention of writing an article. And I don't know if you know this, but I actually broke my thumb dancing
Yeah,
that night. Oh, you do?
yeah.
Yeah, I slipped on some water and fell backwards and broke my thumb and put it in a cup of ice and kept dancing with my broken thumb in a cup of ice the rest of that night, probably 10 feet from you.
You're such a badass.
So anyway,
So now on my end, I was very shy the whole evening and ended up taking some footage on my phone. And the crazy thing is there was, after I met John, there was this like vague memory of us like sort of passing each other for a moment and me like sort of looking away because I was so nervous to like even look anybody in the eyes. I was just so shy at the time and really like quiet and whatnot. Um, so, the next day after the event, I was outside and really disappointed about how my day had been going with my current husband at that time, and was feeling just in this place of like really wanting to call out and ask for more for both of us. I knew he deserved more from me. And it's kind of like John's story. I knew that we both deserved more in our lives, and that realistically neither of us could give it to each other with just the nature of who we were and where our hearts and minds were and what our interests were and our passions and so forth. And so I went outside, and I remember just feeling heartbroken and thinking to myself, please, 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 just come into my life now, praying to this person I had been writing about in my journal, this list I had been creating, which, by the way, after the situation with the pregnancy where I had the dreams about him, the soulmate that lived sort of far away from me, I actually lived in another country, and kind of mentioned something like about too bad, I couldn't have been closer to like come by and say hi to you or something along those lines. Like, and I was just tired of this, distance and everything. And on my list of the person I was trying to manifest, I wrote, he lives local to me, like right after that. And then bam, it was right around the same time John and his ex-wife decided to move to California. So here I was manifesting things without even realizing it. Um, so moving fast forward again back to the event that night, took a little video. Um, Next day I say this prayer asking for the one to come in, and I was just so full in heart space and just tears streaming down my face. I was sitting behind our building. We lived in an old like 1920s writers block, for or not writers block, but row of housing for writers, not too far from one of the movie studios in LA, and sitting out back and just saying that prayer and thinking to myself, I'm so ready for this. It's so my time. I've got this. And I was shocked out of it when I heard a voice that said, please hold on, I'm coming soon. Stopped meditating. I'm like, what in the heck? Bust out my phone, and I'm like trying to just look through and find something to make me smile. And I saw the video from the night before at the event and decided to upload it on YouTube, and it became the first video on this new YouTube account that I was gonna give a go to of like all these adventures I was planning. And went inside and was kind of like doing my thing, and then get a notification that somebody had messaged me about the video, and it was John, just asking me if he could use it and told me to give him a call for a review that he was going to write. And so I called him pretty quick after that, sort of like waited for things to settle down and then called him. And as soon as he said hello, there was like this feeling of like a lightning bolt that went through my body, and this instant knowing like nothing I had ever experienced before. I had never, ever, ever had a moment so profound. Like I actually, you know, was so, like, I really can't explain the shock from what I experienced energetically in that moment. And in just hearing his voice, it was like 5 minutes worth of really hyper thinking occurred in a split second before I could even respond hello back. And one of the things I remember thinking was, oh my God, it's him. And I don't care if he's an 89-year-old, 600-pound, just mangled person. Ugh, it's mine, and I'm gonna go love it for the rest of its life. Like I'm just gonna go love this person the rest of my life.
I feel so special. Most people might have thought, I bet he's cute. But Nikki thought, I'm gonna love him even if he's an absolute platypus.
I just didn't care. I just didn't
I
care. It
was
was like every idea that I had of what kind of person I wanted just fell away. I just knew the soul at that moment. And it didn't matter what you looked like or where you were. I was gonna figure it out.
Well, the truth about where I was when Nikki and I met was I did not know myself. I was in between, sort of half dreaming of finding something more than the relationship that I was in, and sort of half dreaming of sticking around and making it work. And there were certainly things that were missing from my life in a social and spiritual way that I was, meeting in other ways in my pursuits, that led me to the event where we met. But when that moment happened, Nikki has said something. I may not have been aware of it at the time. I may not have been willing to speak it openly and honestly, but when I saw that video and reached out to her and just knew we were supposed to talk, uh, she became from that moment on the most important woman of my life. Now, the rest, we did not just snap right back together. It was, in fact, a year, a month, and a day before
Our first
from
kiss.
before our first kiss.
Yeah.
And so that time period in between, we will absolutely share with you guys, but that'll be another story. I think that one's titled "Friends First." And that's the year and the month and a day that we spent courting each other and sorting out and finishing out, our other relationships and shifting to be in a space to really begin this twin flame union together. So I guess our adventure began before our union began, right?
It did. And the important thing, though, to acknowledge about that night was it ended up, what should have been a 5 or 10 minute conversation ended up being somewhere between 4 and 4.5 hours on the phone, and then about an hour to an hour and a half on Skype. And then by now it's like the wee hours of the morning and we both have to go. And then he still called me first thing the next morning. But that night we discussed the foundations of Blistival, which was something that we're still doing now among many, many, many other things. But it was
There were a lot of foundations set. Yeah, I
oh
believe you talked to me about aliens, that very first conversation. I believe I knew that you were very involved and on the board with MUFON LA,
yes,
or the
yes.
organization formerly known as. I don't remember if you
Yeah.
guys had shifted yet.
No, not yet.
Okay.
And here was another synchronicity that I wasn't even consciously aware of at the time. During the course of the conversation, again, the gentleman, Michael Perlin, who did Three Magic Words, had led me to a gentleman he was working on the Declaration of Consciousness with, by the name of Nandi. And this gentleman was a distributor of something called, who was actually teaching me a lot about the Shivite side of Hinduism while he was learning about the Vaishnava side. I was learning about the Shivite. But he had these powders called scent of samadhi. And during that conversation, even though I had never put two and two together, John kept talking about this stuff called scent of samadhi and that he was going to bring me some. And it wasn't until a couple of nights later, I'm like, when we met, which I'll talk about later, that I was like, oh my gosh, we have
Nandi
this in
Nandi may
common.
have been the first person to have known both of us
Yeah.
in this
He
in
will
this
we
lifetime.
Yeah, we figured out that he was
Yeah,
absolutely the first person that had interacted with both of us around the same time, too. We
that's a
both came into
historically
him.
significant fact, Nandiji,
Yes.
because yes, this is the one who recognized each and both of us and said and initiated us in various ways on our journeys
Mhm.
and taking us down our own spiritual paths. So,
Yeah.
but we're going to talk about all of those other, that time as our friends and the time that we've had since then in our union, and a lot of the other things that we have learned and have to share to help make. The point of this is not to glorify us, guys. If we have any point in this, it's sharing our story so that some piece of it, some trick, some understanding may save you some of the troubles we've had, or even better, point you towards some of the joys that we've found. So,
Absolutely. So thank you so much for listening to the first part of this, which was how we found each other, how John found me, and how I called him in. And uh, we look forward to your questions. And also, you can find us on Facebook. Look up the Facebook group Twin Flames dash 144,000 for the One Tribe.
or you can actually just type in Facebook/groups Twin Flame Found.
Oh,
Yeah, there's
yes.
still the cheat in there, so that just makes it easy. So the group name is 144,000 Twin Flames, 144,000 for the unity of humanity,
Unity of the One Tribe.
unity of the one tribe, and then the short link is facebook.com/groups/Twin Flame Found.
Yes, and there's links on our profile, and I'll try to put some below the video as well in the video description to our website for our counseling and coaching
Yeah, let's just
services.
link bomb them. Totally. Write all this stuff down, and we'll totally type it out in the link so you can just copy it anyway. But Blistival is our 3D business that is involved in the transformational festival scene, so you can always get on there and see what kind of events are coming up. Usually we have promo codes, discount for tickets, things like that. And then starseed-davina.com
Hmm.
was Starseed's site, and now we're both sharing it and using it for our coaching and other various purposes.
Absolutely.
And
So,
that's it. We'll give you more links later. Tune back in or you won't get them.
bye bye.